Chancy and the Grand Rascal by Sid Fleischman. 8. The Scoundrel's Mistake. Colonel Plug was soon on his legs, wet as wash, but good as new. The false eye patch was gone, but in its place was a false air of importance. "Thank you, gentlemen, thank you," he said, clearing his throat. "I don't mind saying you caught a big fish when you hauled me out of the river. A mighty big fish. Allow me to introduce myself. Slackett's the name. I am Senator Ed Elwood P. Slackett, the great sovereign of the great sovereign state of Illinois." The raftsmen were duly impressed, but Chancy stood in a whirl of astonishment. "Glory be!" exclaimed Captain Harp, whipping off his bowler hat as if he were addressing the Stars and Stripes itself. "Welcome, sir. Billy, fetch the senator a chair." "We don't have any chairs, Cap." "A keg, then. Don't keep the senator standing. Pooch, get my blanket out of the doghouse. The senator will catch pneumonia. Boy, a cup of that bully coffee of yours." "Tut, tut," Colonel Plug protested. In the failing light, he took no notice of Chancy. "Don't make any fuss over me, gentlemen. You've saved my life as it is, and I intend to reward you handsomely. I don't mind telling you I'm heavily supplied with funds." He reached into the coat of his for his billfold. His jaw went slack. Then he patted each of his wet pockets. "Gone! Those steamboat scallywags cleaned me out. Every word of a senator from the great sovereign state of Illinois." Try that again. "Those steamboat scallywags cleaned me out. Every penny, confound it. After them, sir. Quick, gentlemen." Captain Harp hooked the bowler back on his head. "I'm right sorry about your billfold, Senator, but we're making top speed as it is." The steamboat had already vanished along the meandering river. Colonel Plug shook his fist in that direction. "Thieves, scoundrels, mark my words. They won't get away with this outrage. First thing in the morning, I intend to take legal action. Where's the coffee?" Billy Arkansas went for the keg, and Pooch Johnson hurried after the blanket. But Chancy just stood there. The mere sight of this humbug set his teeth on edge. It was clear enough that Senator Slackett, as he now chose to call himself, had been caught cheating at cards and been tossed overboard. Why, a wet ace of spades was still caught in his cuff. Chancy could keep silent no longer. "I want my $3 gold piece back," he announced solemnly. What's that?" "Colonel Plug, I reckon you didn't expect to meet up with me again." The imposter gave Chancy a huge squint. "Never forget a face. Stand a bit closer, son, and let me look at you. What did you say your name was? Colonel Plug? My stars, the army is taking them young these days. So you're Colonel Plug at your age. By jacks, that beats all." He burst into a laugh. Doing that voice hurts my throat. He burst into a laugh. Oh, he was a slick one. He was twisting things around already, and Chancy's eyes glowed with rage. "I want my $3 back," he declared. "What's that?" "Sir, you humbugged me out of my steamboat fare." "Poppycock!" Captain Harp glared at Chancy. "Hold your tongue, boy. That's no proper way to talk to a senator from the great and sovereign state of Illinois." Uncle Will stepped in. No offense, Senator. My young nephew appears to be mistaken." Chancy's eyes flashed in surprise. Not even Uncle Will believed him. "But it's him, Uncle Will, Colonel Plug. He lent me those stale eggs and ran off with my money." Colonel Plug puffed up. "A monstrous charge. Simply monstrous." Uncle Will was peering at Chancy. "Didn't you tell me it was a one-eyed man who swindled you? Any fool can see I'm a two-eyed man," laughed Colonel Plug. "I'll vouch for that," Captain Hart put in. "Have a chaw of tobacco, Senator." "No, sir," Chancy protested. "I said he was wearing an eye patch. It was a disguise, the same as his limpy leg." "Limpy leg!" Colonel Plug roared. "Nothing wrong with my legs, either one, by jacks. It's a clear case of mistaken identity. No harm done, lad. Now run along." Chancy was smoldering. It was his word against the word of a senator from the great and sovereign state of Illinois. He wanted to give Colonel Plug a smart kick to the shin. That would give him a limpy leg. "I want my gold piece, sir," he said firmly. "Stop bothering me, boy. Gentlemen, I'd be obliged if you'd allow me to journey down the river with you a spell. I seem to be poverty poor at the moment, but once we reach Illinois, I shall get in touch with my banker. You'll find me generous, very generous indeed. Uncle Will, taking it all in, gave Chancy a sharp nod. Chancy saw that he was beaten. He clamped his jaws and wandered away. Uncle Will joined him at the rear of the shanty and began chuckling. Chancy, he said, you hung on like a bulldog. It's him, Uncle Will. It's Colonel Plug, sure as sunrise, no doubt. Chancy gazed up. You believe me? Of course I do. Why, that man is so sharp and crooked you can use him for a corkscrew. It was all I could do to keep from throwing him back in the river. It was? Chancy's spirits brightened like a Van Dember. But that wouldn't get you a gold piece back, would it? Uncle Will scratched through his curly hair. On the other hand, he could be telling the truth. He's got empty pockets, no doubt. You can't draw cider from an empty jug. Reckon not, Chancy said. And you can't rub human nature the wrong way either. I'm talking about Captain Harp. He just won't listen to the truth. Oh, he's listening, Chancy, but he don't want to hear it. Why, he's proud as a peacock to have a genuine senator aboard. He's not of a mind to let you cheat him out of the pleasure. That's the human nature of it. Patience is the answer. Patience is my advice. He'll come to his senses. Just let Colonel Plug blow himself full of his own wind. He's bound to make some mistake, and then we'll let the air out of him. Won't that be something to see? I'm not saying you'll ever see that gold piece again, but the laugh alone ought to be worth $3. They tied up that night along the Kentucky side of the river. Poosh Johnson hung red and green lanterns in the corners of the raft to warn off steamboats. Chancy kept his distance from Colonel Plug. He wasn't sure he cared about his lost gold piece anymore. They had their woodyard money. But he wanted to see Colonel Plug get his comeuppance. He began to polish his buckeye hopefully. The raftsmen were soon telling stories and slapping at mosquitoes. Billy Arkansas cleaned his long-barreled squirrel gun. Uncle Will wound his clocks, and Colonel Plug sat like a Roman emperor on a molasses keg and chewed Captain Harp's finest tobacco while his clothes were hanging out to dry. He wore Captain Harp's Sunday suit, and he slept that night wrapped in Captain Harp's army blanket. All night long, mosquitoes whined in the air. Rolled up on the hard logs, Captain Harp flailed his neck and forehead from 1 hour to the next. Chancy felt sorry for him, growling and grumbling and groaning while Colonel Plug snored contentedly from the cocoon he had made from the blanket. Chancy was not surprised to see Captain Harp somewhat out of sorts the next day. The raft pilot had hardly got a wink of sleep, and he fared little better the following night. Chancy went about his chores at the cook stove, and Uncle Will said, "The human nature of it is beginning to turn in our favor. Make the coffee a mite stronger." That supper time, Chancy made a pot so strong it would hardly pour. Colonel Plug took a mouthful and was a full minute trying to spit it out. "Where in tarnation did that Ohio farm boy learn to make coffee? This infernal stuff sticks to the roof of the mouth." A stunned silence settled over the raftsmen. Smiles were barely hidden. By dogs, now the rascal had put his foot in it, Chancy thought. He'll be peeling potatoes for breakfast. But Captain Harp, with great sagging eyes, peered at his guest. "Senator," he said slowly, "we don't complain about the grub on this raft. I reckon it ain't fit and proper for a senator from the great and sovereign state of Illinois to serve at a cook stove, so we'll overlook what you said. I'm turning in. I ain't been sleeping much lately." Chancy wanted to protest. Fair was fair, but he saw that it was useless. Uncle Will gave him a long glance. "Patience," he seemed to say. "A mite more patience." Chancy's patience ran out just before dawn. He awoke with a great start. A revelation had come over him like a thunder gust. He could prove that Senator Slackett was the same Colonel Plug he had met on the road. He wanted to wake Uncle Will, then he decided not to. He guessed he ought to do his own talking. For a moment, he listened to Colonel Plug, snoring like a bullfrog. Not far off, Captain Harp was still trying to find a soft place on the hickory logs and fending off mosquitoes. Chancy guessed that his patience had run out too. Chancy left his blanket and crossed the logs. "You awake, Captain Harp?" he whispered. What? Chancy cleared his throat. "Well, sir, like Uncle Will said all along, that varmint was bound to trip over his own tongue, sooner or later." "Vomit? Vomit?" "That impostor's snoring away in your blanket. The truth is he's no more a senator than I am, sir. He as well as admitted it at supper time. He's the man who made off with my gold piece back in Ohio. Captain Harp was thoroughly weary of the hard logs and fully awake now. He gave his neck a resounding slap that missed the mosquito but woke the chicks. Admitted, you say? Yes, sir. There hasn't been a mortal word spoken on this raft about where I'm from. You raftsmen don't ask questions. That's true, we don't. But when he choked on his coffee, he called me an Ohio farm boy. Uncle Will knows it and I know it, but how did he know it? Because that's where we met, back on the farm road in Ohio, where he tracked me out of my money. Exactly the way I tried to tell you. Captain Harp was silent for a moment and then leaped to his feet. Hoo-la-ha! He lurched to the snoring figure of Colonel Plug, got hold of the blanket and whipped it free. The swindler went spinning over several logs. It woke him up and the other raftsmen as well. Captain Harp roared at him like a bear. Rise up, you tallow-nosed windbag. Colonel Plug's face swelled with outrage. What? What? This is monstrous, sir. I declare, said Captain Harp. If you don't look like the hind end of bad luck, I do hate to disturb your slumber, Senator, but the boys will be wanting their morning coffee, and you ain't made it yet. Me, sir? What kind of waggery is this? Captain Harp raised such an angry scowl it almost glowed in the dark. Did you think you had me fooled, you infernal, wormy-eyed, chin-flapping humbug? There's the cook stove. Make the coffee strong as tar. That's the way we like it, and peel up a barrel of potatoes. You're going to do the cooking around this aboard this raft. Hop to it before I change my mind and wrap a hickory log around your neck. Chancy was now standing close enough to see Colonel Plug's face go slack. The raftsmen were ranged around him, and he clearly saw that further argument would be useless. He slunk away toward the cook stove, and the raftsmen broke into a $3 laugh. But Uncle Will slept through it all. When he awoke, he was startled to see Colonel Plug peeling potatoes. Chancy was dangling his feet in the river and polishing his buckeye. And that's the end of Chapter 8.